Before the sun ever touches your window, something has already happened in the spirit. Heaven has released a signal. The morning isn't just light, it's revelation. Every sunrise is God's reminder that something new is waiting to be discovered. But many people wake up and rush into noise, scrolling, worrying, planning, and never pause long enough to hear the whisper that says, "This is the way, walk in it." The tragedy of life is not that God stops speaking, it's that we stop listening. Every morning, God sends a sign, and if you miss it, you may spend the whole day chasing what He already revealed at dawn. You see, the sign of God is rarely dramatic. It's not always thunder in the sky or a sudden miracle in your hand. Sometimes it's that still, quiet awareness that tells you what to release and what to keep. It's that peace that feels unnatural when everything around you looks uncertain. It's the gentle conviction that tells you, you don't need to respond. You don't need to fight. You don't need to hold on. That's not weakness. That's divine strength. The strength that flows from spiritual detachment. Emotional detachment is not coldness. It's clarity. It means your emotions no longer govern your faith. You are not ruled by who left or what didn't happen, because your soul knows who sent you. Detachment is the maturity of trust. When you no longer panic about what's fading, because you understand that God is preparing what's coming. Many people pray for signs, but ignore the ones that require letting go. Sometimes the sign that God is with you is the peace you feel while everything else is falling apart. When God sends a sign in the morning, it often calls for a response of stillness. The world teaches reaction. Heaven teaches reflection. The wise pause before they move. They discern before they decide. They look for the divine fingerprints in what seems ordinary. The moment you wake up, the Spirit is already sending signals. Through the verse that comes to mind, through a sudden thought of gratitude, through the conviction to forgive, through the urge to be silent. That's God's morning sign. Training your spirit to see beyond sight, to feel beyond emotion. But here's the truth. You can't see signs when your soul is cluttered. A noisy heart blinds you to divine patterns. That's why detachment is necessary. It empties you of fear, resentment, and the obsession to control outcomes. When you detach emotionally, you create room for revelation. You stop interpreting every delay as denial and every loss as rejection. You begin to see that sometimes God closes doors not to punish you, but to protect your destiny from contamination. The sign of the morning may be a closed door, and your peace with it is proof that your faith has matured. There are mornings when God tests your awareness. He hides the sign inside what seems ordinary. A conversation, a still moment, a verse you've read 1,000 times. Only a detached spirit notices it, because detachment sharpens perception. When your heart is free from emotional weight, your discernment becomes sharper. You start seeing God's movement in the smallest details. You realize that nothing is random. The delay, the silence, even the pain, all are coded messages from heaven saying, I am still in control. So every morning, before you touch your phone, before you open your schedule, quiet your spirit. Ask, what sign has God sent me today? It may not be spectacular, but it will be significant. The sunrise itself is a prophecy. It means the night has surrendered. And if the night had to surrender to light, then every dark season in your life has an expiration date. Don't miss the sign. Don't rush past the revelation. Heaven has already spoken. The question is, are you still enough to hear? Every morning is not just the continuation of time, it is a divine reset. Each sunrise carries a new instruction, a spiritual message specifically tailored for your journey. Long before your alarm rings, heaven has already dispatched a signal. The morning is not only the beginning of a new day, it's the opening of a new conversation between you and God. Yet most people wake up into noise rather than awareness. They open their eyes, but not their spirit. They see the light, but miss the revelation within the light. Every sunrise says something, but only those who have learned to listen with their spirit can understand what heaven is speaking. You see, God is a God of seasons, patterns, and signs. He never moves randomly. Every day is loaded with divine design, moments that are meant to guide, correct, strengthen, and align you. But his communication is subtle because heaven trains maturity through stillness. God does not shout over the noise you choose to entertain. He whispers to see if your heart desires his voice more than the world's distractions. Every morning, the Spirit releases a new frequency. But it takes a discerning heart to tune in. A discerning heart is not a mind full of information. It is a soul trained in awareness. It's the ability to sense divine movement in what others call coincidence. It's knowing that the small tug in your heart when you wake up is not random. The verse that suddenly comes to mind, the peace that rests on you without reason, the conviction to call someone, to forgive someone, or to pause before making a decision, those are not human impulses. They are divine whispers. They are signals guiding you toward alignment with God's daily plan for your life. The truth is, every day carries its own assignment. No day is wasted and no morning is ordinary. When you wake up, you are stepping into a day that was already written in heaven. Scripture says, "This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." That means God doesn't just create time, he designs each day with purpose. There is something in today that God intends to show you, teach you, or release through you. But to see it, you must live awake, not just physically awake, but spiritually alert. The spiritual person knows that every morning is a briefing. Heaven gives you the instructions for the day, but you can't hear it if your spirit is distracted. The morning hour is sacred. That's why so many great men and women of purpose guard their mornings fiercely. They know that the first voice they hear sets the tone for the rest of the day. If you start your morning with confusion, fear, or distraction, you begin your day out of alignment. But if you begin it in awareness, listening for the signal of heaven, you step into divine rhythm. The signal God sends in the morning is not always about direction. Sometimes it's about preparation. God may not tell you where to go yet, but he will align your attitude for what's coming. Maybe you wake up with a sudden peace. That's a sign that you're about to face something that would normally shake you. but today it won't. Maybe you wake up with a burden to pray for someone. That's not random. That's heaven trusting you with intercession. Maybe you wake up feeling unusually still. That's God telling you to slow down, because He's about to reveal something that rush would make you miss. The danger is that too many people treat the morning as ordinary. They rush into the day without consulting the one who created it. They move before they receive instruction. And when you move before instruction, you operate on reaction instead of revelation. You end up fighting battles God never told you to fight, chasing opportunities He never approved, and worrying about problems He already solved. That's why discerning the morning signal is vital. It saves you from unnecessary battles and wasted energy. There's something sacred about the early hours before the noise begins. The world is quiet, creation listens, and heaven speaks. The morning was designed for divine conversation. That's why Scripture says, He awakens me morning by morning. He awakens my ear to listen as one being instructed. That verse reveals a mystery. God wakes you up not just to live, but to listen. The moment your eyes open, heaven expects attention. God's first act of the day is not to give you strength to move, but to give you awareness to hear. You can miss an entire season because you missed a single morning sign. There are instructions that only come in the freshness of dawn, before your spirit becomes heavy with the world's noise. That's why spiritual people protect their first minutes after waking. They don't reach for their phones or for people. They reach for presence. They know the signal comes early, before the mind interferes. That's the time God drops divine ideas, visions, or direction for the day. The world may call it intuition, but the Spirit-filled know it as revelation. Every morning is like a coded message. It contains wisdom for that day's challenges. Some days you'll sense urgency, others rest. Some mornings will carry conviction, others confirmation. God adjusts the signal based on what your soul needs to fulfill His purpose that day. But you must tune your spirit to the right frequency, the frequency of peace. The voice of God never speaks through anxiety. If you want to hear the morning signal, you must learn to quiet your inner storm. A noisy soul cannot discern a gentle whisper. There's also timing in divine communication. God doesn't repeat what you ignore. If you don't respond to the morning signal, heaven doesn't waste revelation. The instruction will move to someone else who is listening. That's why sensitivity is spiritual currency. The more responsive you are to God's whispers, the more He entrusts you with. Awareness increases access. The sign you obey today becomes the gateway for tomorrow's assignment. So when you wake up, don't just ask, what do I need to do today? Ask, what is heaven saying today? Look beyond the obvious. Pay attention to what stands out. A phrase, a thought, a memory, a conviction. The Spirit rarely speaks in paragraphs. He speaks in impressions. But within those impressions lies divine direction. The whole course of your day can shift by one subtle signal from God. Every morning is sacred territory between sleep and purpose. It's the time heaven resets your spirit, restores your peace, and realigns your steps. Don't let routine rob you of revelation. Each sunrise is God saying, I'm still with you. I still have a plan. I still believe in what I put in you. The question is, are you listening? Because the signal is sent, but recognition is a choice. The voice is constant, but awareness is rare. Only the discerning heart receives what heaven releases at dawn. There is a sacred strength that only appears when you are no longer ruled by how things turn out. The moment your peace stops depending on results, you enter divine order. Most people confuse emotional detachment with coldness, as if detachment means you no longer care. But true detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means your trust in God becomes greater than your attachment to what you want. You stop chasing outcomes and you start following instructions. You stop trying to make everything make sense and you start flowing with the rhythm of heaven. Detachment is not withdrawal, it is spiritual maturity in motion. It's when your emotions finally bow to your assignment. Every day God is leading you, not through fear, but through peace. But peace cannot rule a heart that's attached to outcomes. When your emotions are tied to how things must happen, you lose sensitivity to how God wants them to happen. The Spirit can't lead a soul that's still negotiating surrender. The longer you hold on to your version of the plan, the longer you delay His purpose. That's why emotional detachment is alignment. It's not the death of desire, it's the purification of it. When your desires no longer compete with His direction, your life begins to flow in divine sequence. You see, God will often test your attachments before He releases your assignment. He will bring you to moments where the thing you love is not responding the way you expected, not to break your heart, but to break your dependence. Because as long as you need something to feel complete, you are not yet free to be led. God can only lead people who are light enough to move when He speaks. Detachment makes you light. It removes the weights of expectation, fear, and control. It's not indifference. It's divine flexibility. When you detach emotionally and you learn the language of faith, faith says, even if it doesn't go my way, I still trust that God's way is better. You stop treating disappointment as a crisis and start seeing it as redirection. You stop needing proof to obey. You no longer interpret silence as absence or delay as denial. You understand that heaven moves in timing, not tension. Emotional detachment trains your spirit to rest, even when your mind has no answers. It's the art of staying still in the middle of uncertainty, knowing that divine order is working behind the curtain. Think about Abraham. God told him to leave everything familiar and walk toward a place he'd never seen. He didn't give him details, only direction. That kind of obedience requires detachment. Detachment from comfort, from logic, from timelines. You cannot walk by faith while holding on to your need for control. God's order requires release. When Abraham detached, he entered alignment. And when he entered alignment, he became the father of nations. That's what happens when detachment meets destiny. The truth is, emotional attachment to outcomes is one of the greatest enemies of peace. It creates anxiety because it ties your stability to things you cannot control. But detachment returns your authority when you let go of the need to control the how. And when you rediscover the who, you stop obsessing over outcomes and start focusing on obedience. You stop chasing signs and start trusting the source. Detachment shifts your posture from striving to surrender, and surrender is the only position that attracts divine favor. Many people pray for alignment, but resist the process that produces it. Alignment requires pruning. Not everything you want belongs in the next season. God will intentionally allow certain things to fade to test if your trust is emotional or spiritual. When your joy is attached to people, possessions, or positions, it will always fluctuate. But when your joy flows from divine alignment, no circumstance can shake it. That's why detachment is the proof of maturity. It shows that your peace is rooted in purpose, not pleasure. The reason many believers miss God's signals is because they are too emotionally entangled with outcomes. They can't hear divine instruction because they're busy defending their preferences. You can't discern heaven's whisper while holding on to your own agenda. Detachment clears the noise. It silences the ego, the fear, and the constant need to be in control. The moment you release control, divine order steps in. Heaven cannot order what the flesh still occupies. Sometimes God will allow something you love to no longer satisfy you. He'll make what once felt comfortable suddenly feel empty. Not because He wants to punish you, but because He wants to shift your focus. Emotional detachment often begins with divine discomfort. God disturbs what's stable to reveal what's sacred. The relationships, jobs, or desires that no longer fit are not losses. They're invitations to alignment. When you no longer force what God is freeing you from, you enter the peace that passes understanding. Detachment also redefines how you interpret success. When you are emotionally attached, success means everything going your way. But when you are spiritually aligned, success means everything moving God's way. You realize that progress in the kingdom is not measured by outcomes, but by obedience. The question shifts from, did I get what I wanted? To, did I do what He said? That's the posture of divine alignment. Peace in purpose, not panic in performance. The greatest evidence of emotional detachment is stillness in uncertainty. When you can stand in the middle of change and not lose your center, you have entered the flow of divine order. That's when you can say, if it comes, I'm grateful. If it goes, I'm grounded. You are no longer shaken by the movement of seasons because your roots are not in outcomes. They are in obedience. The winds can blow, but alignment holds you steady. Emotional detachment is freedom disguised as surrender. It's the quiet strength that allows you to bless what's leaving and still praise what's coming. It's when your heart learns that you don't need to control life to be at peace in it. You become like a river, flowing, flexible, unforced. And in that flow, divine order becomes visible. The right people find you. The right opportunities align. The right doors open without struggle. Because heaven responds to surrender, not striving. So when God begins to strip away attachments, don't fight it. Recognize the divine pattern. He's not taking something from you. He's taking something off you. He's removing what keeps you heavy so you can move with Him. The less attached you are to outcomes, the more open you are to instruction. And the more open you are to instruction, the more accurately heaven can guide you. That is the essence of alignment, being so centered in trust that nothing external can disturb your internal peace. True detachment doesn't make you emotionless, it makes you unshakable. It doesn't make you careless, it makes you clear. You stop living from reaction and start living from revelation. You stop chasing results and start walking in rhythm. When you detach, you stop needing everything to make sense, because you finally trust that divine order always does. And when your emotions no longer compete with your faith, your life begins to move in the harmony of heaven's design.